All right, well, besides voting for the next president, obviously, I'm sure you probably noticed on some of your ballots some initiatives directed at amending certain state constitutional policy issues like voter ID, immigration, and of course, abortion was on there. Iowa, Idaho, Kentucky, Missouri, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Wisconsin all passed an amendment that requires citizenship in order to vote. Noble concept, right? Nevada requiring a photo ID when voting also. There are so many issues, though. Mary Rook, Daily Caller columnist, and Tony Katz, host of the Tony Katz Today. All right, so, Mary, what is your thought about how many ballot initiatives were up for vote this time?
You know, I think that this was a play by the Democrat Party to try and drum up, extra voters to come to the polls. A lot of these ballot initiatives were outside of like voting things like voter ID, non-citizens. A lot of them were like abortion initiatives. They were hoping that it would drum up that female vote that they desperately needed. But as we noticed, the citizenship right to vote, having, ID to vote, making sure that only American citizens are voting, those types of things are going to play really heavily in an election where you have illegal immigration as the top line issue.
Yeah, well, actually, Tony, I mean, I'm thinking, why would this not be, why would anybody vote against this? Well, we know.
Well, you still have the people who believe that it's wrong to even think of being a citizen. We're a country of the world. We're not even a country. A border isn't necessary. You don't stop people from entering your country. Remember, these are people who take a look at illegal immigration and they say, you know what? What's really illegal? Can a human being be illegal? So they always have some reason for why you should accept what it is that they want to thrust upon you. But it is fascinating. I mean, you go through that list of states you put up, and one after another, the rational people said, well, yeah, of course, if I need an ID for Sudafed, I should have to have an ID to vote. We should know who the people are who are voting, and they should be U.S. citizens.
I'll concede you don't need an ID to vote when they concede I don't need an ID to buy a gun. How about that? All right, so this actually...
You'll need the ID to vote.
Yeah.
The vote can do more damage than the gun by far.
That's actually a very fair point. You can vote for someone that'll send 1 million people to war. All right, so, Mary, there's this, amendment that passed in New York. Super strangely worded. A ton of people, I don't think, even understood it. It said, quote, protect all New Yorkers against unequal treatment based on their ethnicity, national origin, age, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy outcomes, and reproductive health care and autonomy. Note how it lists national origin as a constitutionally protected class. Mary, this essentially tricked voters into allowing illegals to vote in some local elections and some other provisions by making it seem like this amendment was necessary to protect abortion rights, which in New York, that's never going away in New York.
Yeah, they did the same thing with quote unquote transgender care, where they would wrap it up into some abortion amendment to try and get people to say, well, if you don't pass this, then you'll lose your right to abortion. And then we have to castrate our children. So this is a real scare tactic of the left that they've been doing for a while now. And, it's kind of shocking that it passed in New York, knowing how badly they've been hurt by the open border system and how badly they've been hurt by illegal immigration, especially in New York City. And then you see all these counties. I mean, we didn't flip New York red, but you see them really trending red. New York City went very red, considering decades and decades of, blue monopoly there. And so something like this it's shocking to see that they passed it, but at the same time, as you said, the wording on it makes it so ambiguous that people get confused and they say, well, yeah, I mean, you shouldn't discriminate against these people. It's essentially playing its emotional terrorism on the voter.
Tony, what state are you in, dude?
I'm in Indiana.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I thought you were in Florida. But anyway, there was this Florida 6-week abortion ban that's going to stay in place now after the ballot that the Democrats, or the initiative the Democrats put on the ballot. It failed on a biblical proportion. They also, the devil's lettuce legalization provision, totally rejected because they don't want you walking around smelling like pot in Florida, North Dakota, and South Dakota. I mean, this is crazy. And after, it was amazing to me that there is such stark differences between the states, but this is federalism.
Yeah, this is exactly it. I spent years living in Tampa Bay. My mother lives in the Villages. My mother-in-law lives in Pasco County. I am a fan, and it's a great cigar place to be. Ybor City is the only spot to be. But Florida is also unique because when you take a look at that piece of legislation that you're talking about that went down, Florida requires 60% of the vote. Their argument is it's not enough to say 50+1 to make these wholesale changes to the Constitution. You actually have to have consensus. And when you go back to all of those other things you were talking about, look at the spreads, look at the number of people who said yes to citizenship. It's in 60, 65, 70%. You never see those kinds of numbers. Consensus, the actual people realizing that this is something that they want. It's just like when you want to do something with our Constitution, you need 3/4 of the states, not a simple majority. You need to have consensus. Florida understood that, and it's a really nice piece of how they do things down there.
And I hope they do that with the 16th Amendment. Get rid of that trash. No more federal tax, income tax. But after all that, Mary, all those losses, the amendments, Chris Matthews said this on MSNBC on illegal immigration. Roll this.
Immigration has been a terrible decision for Democrats. I don't know who they think they were playing to when they let millions of people come cruising through the border at their own will. Because of their own decisions, they came running through that border, and they didn't do a thing about it. And I don't know who liked it. The Hispanics apparently didn't like it. They want the law enforced. And so I'm not sure they were playing to anything that was smart here.
You don't say. I mean, like, how come nobody on the left realized this while 20 million people poured through our border with fentanyl, raping people, and taking over just a handful of apartment complexes in Colorado?
Yeah, it's because they're not allowed to. The people that control their mouths are the ones that are telling them, don't bring any attention to the border. Don't bring any attention to the devastation that's done by our economy. Don't bring any attention to any of the bad things that are happening from the Democrats because it's going to hurt us in the election. They weren't allowed to talk about it. That's the reason why when you turned on MSNBC, when you turned on CNN, when you turned on ABC, what were they talking about? They were talking about abortion and democracy, how this election was going to be a referendum on those two things. And then they wake up today and they see that the entire American populace voted on the economy and illegal immigration, and they wake up shocked. Like it's the first time they've ever heard of it.
I'm so here for it, though. It's great. Mary, Tony, always a pleasure.